In the fall of 2019, we ventured off in our motorhome on a 6-week, 6,000-mile trip to see some of the western United States. I didn't record any video during this trip, but I did manage to take about 2,000 photos along the way. So I've broken those photos up into a 5-part series video slideshow, and this video is an overview of that entire trip. Some of the sightseeing trips we made along the way were in Cincinnati, Ohio, where we saw Jungle Jim's International Market. And up to Minneapolis, we've seen the Mall of America, Rapid City, South Dakota, Colorado Springs, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Carlsbad, New Mexico, Amarillo, Texas, Branson, Missouri, Memphis, Tennessee, over to Georgia, and then on home. We started out and we made a stop at this Ellis Brothers nut store. We always stop there, and they, of course, give free samples out of everything. And then we proceeded up to Cincinnati, went to Jungle Jim's International Market. That's something to see. And we visited the Chateau La Roche Castle. From there we headed more west and made one stop at this I-80 truck stop, supposed to be the world's largest truck stop. And then on up to Minneapolis. From there we visited the Mall of America. Always wanted to see that. And they have a big amusement park right in the center of it. Then heading west on I-90, it is a long road of nothing. And finally stopped in Midland, South Dakota, went to this 1880 town replica, which was very interesting. And then the Minuteman Missile National Historic Site, and then into the Badlands. And you can see why they call it the Badlands. And then when we exited there, before we exited, we did see a lot of prairie dogs and antelope. We stopped at the Wall Drugstore in Wall, South Dakota. That's well known for what they have there. And then in Rapid City, we toured from there, went up to Sturgis, and over to Deadwood. Denise had been watching the series Deadwood on TV, wanted to see Wild Bill Hickok and Calamity Jane's burial site. And then we went to Mount Rushmore, brief stay there, and then visited the Custer State Park and drove the Needles Highway. And you can see why they call it the Needles Highway. Saw some buffalo a little bit closer than I wanted to see. Went by the Boer Buffalo Jump on the way to Wyoming, and that's just a big hole in the ground where the Indians routed all the buffalo into to kill them. Went through Sundance, not much to see there with a population of 1,100. Then we got out to the Devil's Tower, Wyoming, and that was kind of interesting. I didn't know much about it, and they have a paved trail around the base of it, about 1.5 miles, and we did walk around that. Got in the rain leaving Rapid City and headed for Cheyenne. Cheyenne, Wyoming was kind of neat. Had these big cowboy boots all decorated up all over. From there, we drove over to Estes Park, where you hear about the antelope walking around downtown. Went up in the Rocky Mountain National Park, up over about 12,000 feet. Saw a little snow while we were up there. From there, we headed back into Colorado and down to Colorado Springs. Went to the Garden of the Gods Park, which was quite interesting. Then we headed to the Pike Peak National Forest and went all the way up to the top of Pikes Peak. And you can see the further we get up, you get above that tree line, and it gets pretty barren up there. And up to the top, it was like 40-mile-an-hour winds and 30 degrees. And at 14,000 feet, you are up above the clouds. Then we went to this Manitou cliff dwelling exhibit, and that was kind of interesting. And we drove down and went to Santa Fe, and then over to Albuquerque, and was able to stop into the Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta for the afternoon. And that's something you really have to be there to experience. It is, the magnitude is just overwhelming. And we'll be planning on going back. From there, we drove down to Carlsbad, New Mexico, and that was a long trip of nothing. Saw a couple strange cowboys alongside the road. We got to Carlsbad. We did go through Roswell, New Mexico, which was a surprise because that's a big city of 50,000 people. A lot of these green aliens all over the place. So while we were in Carlsbad, we went to the Carlsbad Cavern and stayed there late in the evening to watch the bats lay out. It's up in the middle of nowhere, up in the mountains. And from Carlsbad, we drove to Amarillo, Texas. And that was like 250 miles of absolutely nothing. Except some cattle feedlots. And we stayed at this Oasis RV resort. In a minute you'll see why they got that RV planted in the ground like that. From there we went over to the Big Texan Ranch Steakhouse, and I didn't try their 72-ounce steak that you can get free if you eat it all. This is the Cadillac Ranch. I'd heard about this. It's out in the middle of a pasture right near off I-40, I think it is. I wasn't all that impressed with it. But this Palo Duro Canyon was quite nice. That's a short drive from there. So we did drive over and go through it. And from there, windmills, of course, we saw everywhere. Went into Oklahoma, stopped at this place in Weatherford, and went to the Lucille's Roadhouse on Route 66. Then we headed into Branson. And from Branson we drove up to Springfield and went to the Bass Pro Shop up there to see their unbelievable museum and aquarium that they have there. That's something you really have to see. You would expect to see something like this in the Smithsonian Institution. Those are full-size boats that are inside there. The place is huge. It was a Sunday, so we took advantage of their Sunday brunch in the Hemingway's Cafe. That was quite nice. Then we went to Memphis and another Bass Pro Shop called the Pyramid. And we went up on top their the peak of it at their observation deck, where they have a restaurant up there. Then we headed into Georgia, and I had a new truck ordered, so we stopped there to pick it up and exchange, and then headed on home from there. And when we got home, of course, the coach was due for a long overdue bath, so I had to take care of that. I've included an index of the 5 videos I've put together that will give you an idea of what content is in each of the videos.